That's very good for you. So you locked the door, ate the whole Christmas chicken, and let your children cry outside.
That was exactly how Tobore lost his humanity and became a chicken. In the village of Akomu, there lived a man named Tobore. Big Belly Tobore, the children called him behind his back. Not because he was fat, no, but because no matter how much food entered his house, it never seemed to reach anyone else. Every Christmas, while the rest of the village gathered under the big Iroko tree to share roasted yams, fried plantains, and jollof rice that smelled like heaven itself, Tobore did something else, something the whole village whispered about but never dared to confront. He ate alone. The biggest chicken, the fattest goat meat, the sweetest part of everything, he kept it all for himself. And on Christmas Day, when the aroma of roasted chicken should have brought joy to his wife Aina and his 3 small children, it brought only tears, because Tobore would lock the door. This particular Christmas Eve, Aina stood in the small kitchen, her hands shaking as she seasoned the chicken. It was a beautiful bird, full-bodied, with smooth skin that would crisp perfectly over the fire. She imagined her children's faces when they tasted it. Little only 6 years old, had been talking about Christmas chicken for weeks. "Mama, will we eat chicken this time?" had asked just that morning, her eyes wide with hope. Aina smiled weakly. "We will see, my daughter, we will see." But she already knew the answer. She had known it for 7 Christmases now. As the sun began to set and the chicken finished roasting, filling the air with a smell so rich it made your mouth water without permission, Tobore emerged from the back room where he had been sleeping. His eyes went straight to the chicken. "Ah," he said, stretching his arms above his head. "Finally, I've been waiting all day." Aina's heart sank. "Tobore, the children haven't eaten yet. Can we not all sit together this time, just this once?" Tobore's face hardened like clay left too long in the sun. "Woman, did I ask you to speak? Who bought that chicken? Who paid for the pepper and onions? This is my house, my food, my chicken." The children appeared in the doorway, drawn by the smell and the sound of their father's raised voice. Mm's lip trembled. The 2 boys, Chidi and Kunle, stood frozen, knowing better than to speak. Togore wrapped the entire roasted chicken in an old cloth, picked up a cup of palm wine and walked toward his room. Before he closed the door, he turned back. "If I hear any noise, any crying, any disturbance while I eat, I will make sure none of you eat anything for 3 days. Are we clear?" No one answered. The door slammed, and they heard the sound of the wooden bolt sliding into place from the inside. Outside, darkness was falling fast. Aina sat on the floor with her children gathered around her, their stomachs growling in harmony like a sad song. She managed to boil a few yams, but they were small and tasteless without any stew or meat. Picked at hers, tears running silently down her cheeks. "Mama, why does Papa not share?" Aina had no answer that would make sense to a 6-year-old, so she just held her daughter close and hummed an old lullaby, the kind her own mother used to sing when things were hard. But someone else had been watching. From the shadows near the compound gate, an old woman stood perfectly still. Her name was Mama Kema, and she had once been Tobore's closest neighbor. Years ago, when her husband died and left her with nothing, she went to Tobore and begged for help. Just a little rice, some dried fish, anything to feed her grandchildren. Tobore laughed in her face. "Old woman, am I your husband? Go and beg somewhere else. I work for my family, not for every useless mouth." He slammed the door in her face, and one of her grandchildren, a little boy named Ejike, died 2 weeks later. The hunger was too much for his small body. Mama Kema never forgot, and she never forgave. Now, as she stood in the shadows watching Tobore's children cry while their father feasted inside, something ancient and dangerous stirred in her chest. She reached into the pouch that hung around her neck, a pouch that held things most people in the village feared: dried herbs, ground bones, words that should not be spoken lightly. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the night carried it like a drumbeat. "Spirit of hunger, spirit of greed, hear me now. The man who eats alone while others starve, let him become what he devours. Let him wear the skin of his selfishness until he learns what it means to give." The air grew cold. Somewhere in the distance, a dog began to howl. And in Tobore's locked room, as he bit into the tender chicken breast and smiled at his own cleverness, he did not notice the way the moonlight through the window had turned strange and silver. He did not notice the way the chicken bones seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. He finished every piece, sucked the bones clean, licked his fingers, and fell asleep with a full belly and an empty heart. But around 3 in the morning, something woke him. An itch. It started on his arms, small, annoying, like tiny insects crawling under his skin. Tobore scratched lazily at first, still half asleep, but the itching grew stronger, more intense. Soon it spread to his chest, his back, his legs, everywhere. When he scratched, he felt something strange under his fingernails, something soft, something that shouldn't be there. Tobore stumbled to the window where the moonlight was brightest and held up his arm. His blood turned to ice. Growing out of his skin, thick and unmistakable, were tiny white feathers. No, no, no! He rubbed his arms hard, trying to brush them away, but they didn't come off. They were part of him now. And as he watched in horror, more pushed through his skin like grass sprouting after rain. He tried to call out for Aina, but his voice cracked strangely, high-pitched and sharp. Aina, squawk, squawk! The sound that came from his throat was not human. Tobore grabbed his throat with both hands, eyes wide with terror. He tried again. Help! Squawk! Squawk! His voice was gone, completely gone. In its place was the unmistakable cry of a chicken. If you are watching this, you need to subscribe right now, because what happens next will shock you. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. By the time the first light of Christmas morning crept over the village, Tobore was no longer a man. His arms became wings. His legs had thinned and bent backwards, ending in sharp talons. Feathers covered every inch of his body, white and brown and mottled like the very chicken he had devoured the night before. When Aina finally knocked on the door, worried because she hadn't heard him stirring, the only response she got was frantic clucking. Tobore, are you all right? Squawk! 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 She forced the door open with the help of her sons. What they saw made Aina scream. Standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by scattered chicken bones, was a full-grown rooster. It was large, almost unnaturally so, with wild, frightened eyes that looked too human. The rooster saw them and rushed forward, grabbing at Aina's wrapper, pulling desperately. But Aina was staring at the rooster, at its eyes, at the way it moved, at the small scar above its left eye, the same scar Tobore had gotten years ago. Tobore? The rooster froze, then nodded his head frantically up and down. Aina's legs gave out. Oh, ancestors, what has happened?
Word spread through Akumu like wildfire. By midday, the entire village had gathered outside Tobore's compound. Some came to mock, others came to witness, but most came because they had heard Mama Kema's voice, loud and clear, in the center of the crowd. Bring out the chicken! Chidi, trembling, carried his father, now a rooster, outside in a cage. The crowd gasped and murmured. Some laughed, others shook their heads in fear. Mama Kema stepped forward, her eyes burning with ancient power. This man ate alone while others starved. He hoarded, he refused to share, he mocked the hungry and turned away the poor. Now he has become what he ate. She pointed at the terrified rooster. The curse can only be broken when he gives freely what he kept for himself. Every hidden thing, every secret stash, every coin and grain he hoarded while others suffered, it must all be brought out and shared with those who have nothing, the widows, the orphans, the forgotten ones. She turned to Aina. Search the house, find everything he hid, and give it all away. Aina stood slowly, understanding dawning on her face. She had always known Tobore kept things hidden. Money buried in pots, bags of rice stashed under floorboards. She had seen him counting coins in secret, heard him moving things late at night. Now she would find it all. The search began immediately. Aina entered the house with the village women following her, and what they found made everyone gasp. Beneath the sleeping mat, a clay pot filled with coins and folded naira notes, money that could have fed 3 families for a year. Hidden in the rafters, dried fish wrapped in old newspapers, smoked meat, bags of rice stacked carefully behind wooden beams. Buried in the corner, another pot filled with jewelry, gifts that Tobore's mother had given him to pass on to Aina, but which he had never allowed her to wear. Under a loose floorboard, more money and documents showing that Tobore owned 2 extra plots of land he had never told anyone about. With each discovery, the crowd's anger grew louder, but so did something else. Understanding, because almost everyone there knew someone like Tobore or had been tempted to become like him themselves. Outside, Tobore the rooster paced frantically in his cage. His bird mind was in chaos, confused, ruled by instinct and panic. But somewhere deep inside, a small human part of him still understood. They were taking everything, everything he had worked for, everything he had hidden. And he couldn't stop them. All that came out was, squawk, squawk, squawk. Mama Kema stood in the center as the goods were brought out. She directed everything with a firm hand. The money divided among the 10 poorest families. The dried fish and meat, take it to the widow's compound. The rice, give it to the school, let the children eat. The jewelry, sell it, use the money to fix the broken well. The land, give it to the youth cooperative. The harvest will feed everyone. As each item was given away, something strange happened. The rooster began to tremble. It was subtle at first, just a shaking in the wings. But as more of Tobore's hoard was distributed, the trembling grew stronger. Mama Kema, look! Aina pointed. The rooster was changing. Not back to human yet, but changing. The feathers seemed looser. The eyes seemed clearer. Continue, Mama Kema commanded. We're not finished yet. The distribution took hours. By sunset, almost everything had been given away. Children who had gone to bed hungry were now eating meat. Mothers who had been worrying were now holding money. The forgotten were now remembered. And with each gift given, Tobore the rooster trembled harder and harder. Finally, there was only one thing left. A small wooden box that Aina found hidden behind a loose brick. Inside were tiny baby shoes, the shoes her first child had worn when she was only 1 year old before Emem was born. Tobore had kept them, hidden them away, never told her. Aina held the shoes to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Why did you hide these from me? The rooster made a sound, low, broken, almost like sobbing. Mama Kema approached quietly. Those shoes represent love he was too afraid to show, too afraid to share even with you. She turned to the crowd. Is there someone here who has lost a child? A woman named BC stepped forward. Slowly, she had lost her twin sons the year before and had nothing left of them. No photos, no clothing, nothing to hold when the grief became too heavy. Aina looked at the shoes, looked at BC's empty arms, looked at the broken rooster, and she understood the final lesson. It wasn't just about money or food. It was about sharing even the things that hurt to give away. These were my daughters, Aina said softly, walking towards BC. But now they can help you remember your sons. Please, take them. BC's hands shook as she accepted the shoes. She held them close and wept. And in that moment, the rooster began to glow.
The transformation was not gentle. The rooster's body convulsed violently. Feathers began to fall like snow, covering the ground. The wings bent and stretched and cracked, reshaping into arms. The beak retracted. Talons became toes. Animal cries became human screams. The crowd stepped back in awe and fear. And when the light faded and the last feather fell, there was Tobore, human again, naked, shaking, covered in sweat and tears, lying in a heap on the ground. But changed, completely changed. Someone draped a cloth over him. He looked up and saw Aina standing above him, her face unreadable. Can you stand? She asked quietly. He nodded, though he wasn't sure. With her help, he got to his feet, legs shaking. The village was silent, watching, waiting. Tobore's mouth opened, then closed. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry. 2 words, so small, so insufficient for years of selfishness. But they were a beginning. He turned to Mama Kema. You had every right to curse me. I refused you when you needed help. I laughed at your suffering. I was the reason your grandson, he couldn't finish. Mama Kema's face remained stern. Tell me, Tobore, when you were a chicken, trapped, unable to speak, did you finally understand what it means to be powerless? Tobore nodded, throat tight. And when you watched everything being given away, did you die from it? He shook his head slowly. No, Mama Kema said. You lived. In fact, you are more alive now than before. Because sharing does not kill us. Hoarding does. Greed does. Her voice rose strong and clear. What is shared brings life. What is hoarded brings death. In the days that followed, Tobore did something no one expected. He walked. He joined the youth cooperative farming his previously hidden land. He showed up every morning at dawn. When the harvest came, he insisted his family receive only an equal share, nothing more. He went to every family that had received part of his wealth and asked, is it enough? Do you need more? How can I help? At first, people were suspicious, but as weeks turned into months, they began to believe the change was real. One day, Aina found him sitting outside with Emem on his lap, sharing a single mango between them. He would take a bite, then give her a bite, laughing together. It was such a simple thing, but Aina had never seen it before. Tobore, are you happy? She said softly. He looked at her surprised. Then he looked down at Emem, sticky with mango juice and grinning. He thought about the work he had done, the way people now greeted him warmly, the lightness in his chest where fear used to live. Yes, he said, realizing it was true. I think I finally am. That Christmas, 1 year after his transformation, the village gathered under the big Iroko tree. Tobore stood before them with his family beside him. On the table was the biggest chicken anyone had seen. The village grew quiet, watching, waiting. Tobore's mouth opened, then closed. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse. This Christmas, this chicken belongs to everyone. Every person here will eat, every child will have meat, and I will have the smallest piece because I have already eaten more than my share in this life. The crowd erupted in cheers, children ran forward, families gathered close, and as the chicken was divided, more than enough when shared properly, Tobore sat with his small portion and ate slowly. Not because it tasted better than all the chickens he had eaten alone, but because for the first time in his life, he was truly full. Mama Kema watched from the edge, a small smile on her face. Emem ran up to her with a piece of chicken wrapped in banana leaf. For you, Mama Kema, Papa said to make sure you get the best piece. The old woman's eyes grew wet. She touched Emem's cheek gently. Tell your father the curse is fully lifted now, not because of magic, but because his heart has changed, and that is the strongest magic of all. Friends, Tobore's story teaches us something we all need to remember. What we keep for ourselves alone will eventually consume us, but what we share will multiply and bring life, not just to others, but to ourselves. We all have chickens we eat alone. Maybe it's not food. Maybe it's opportunities we refuse to share. Knowledge we keep hidden. Success we don't want others to access. Money we hoard while others struggle. Time we spend only on ourselves. But the truth is simple. We are not truly wealthy until everyone around us has enough. We are not truly full until everyone has eaten. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss these powerful lessons. And tell me in the comments, what are you ready to share?